All right, folks, again, this is Jenna Tourget, the facilitator for today's workshop. I think we'll get started. We have a few people who will be trickling in at the beginning of the meeting, but we wanted to start. We have a lot of information to share and a lot that we want to hear from you today. So we'll get going. Again, we want to welcome you to today's workshop. We're glad you could join us. I'm sure over this time of COVID-19 and staying at home, many folks have gotten used to different platforms. And this platform is very similar to Zoom. And I just wanted to walk through some of the features so that as we are here today and we have opportunities to provide input, you're able to use the platform well. And so if you go to the top of the screen, you'll see that you are viewing my screen, Jenna Tourget. I like to click on that little button that says View Options and click on Side-by-Side mode. So this might not be exactly what your screen looks like, but it should be pretty similar. So click on Side-by-Side mode. That means the pictures will go, the videos will go on the side, and you'll have the presentation in the middle. We'll have an opportunity for some Q&A and some introductions. And so at the bottom left of your screen, you'll see audio settings. You can mute and unmute yourself. Everyone's automatically muted at the beginning. But the way that we can know if you want to share with us is if you use the raise hand feature. So if you click on the participants tab, you'll see a list of names come up on the side. You'll see your name there, and you can click on the raised hand feature, and it lets us know that you have something that you would like to share, or you would like to speak as well. We're going to be using the chat box throughout the workshop today as well. And so if you go to the bottom, again, that bar at the bottom of your screen and click on chat, you'll see that we have some technical support messages there. And if you are having any issues, you can also reach out to us in that way as well. You know, again, a lot of us have been on virtual meetings. A lot of us have been in in-person workshops. And so we like to just set the stage at the beginning to talk about what we expect for today and how we will interact with each other for the most productive workshop possible. So the first thing I would say is that we are absolutely happy and excited you could join us for this workshop. And we'd ask that you actively participate. We need your input as part of this process. As you would in person, just be respectful, listen for understanding, and respect differences, but leave room to learn, and most importantly, have some fun. And as a reminder, this workshop is being recorded and will be posted on the project website later. That's www.indianwells.generalplan.org. So if someone did miss this or you have to drop off for a little bit, you can also go and watch the recording later as well. Today, we're starting right now with welcome and introductions. We'll dive into a general plan update overview and why we're doing a general plan update. We'll introduce a part of that general plan update, a community profile of Indian Wells. We'll do a visioning exercise, talk about the opportunity areas in the cities, and have a wrap up and next steps. There's going to be a lot of opportunities to hear from you in different ways, through polling, through the chat box, through the raise hand feature. So just be aware and listening for when those items happen, and we'll make sure to walk you through the process of how that gets done. So I'm going to turn it over now to John Berg, the Community Development Director for the City of Indian Wells. John, take it away.
Great, thank you, Jenna, I appreciate that. And City of Indian Wells would like to welcome you and thank you all for your interest and participation in the city's comprehensive general plan update process. We wish we could all be together, as Jenna mentioned, but as we all know, 2020 has had different ideas in mind for us. So first off, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce members of the city and consultant team who are online with you today. As Jenna mentioned, my name is John Berg. I am the Community Development Director at the city. I'm joined by my assistant planner, Luis Rubalcaba, our management analyst, Michaela Wilkie. Amanda Tropiano is also with us, and she is from the De Novo Planning Group, and will be heading up the efforts for the general plan update. Jenna Tourget, who you just met, and her associate Christian Mendez, they're both with Kearns and West. And we are also fortunate enough to, to have our honorable council member, Mr. Ted Mertens, with us today, and also Chris Freeland, our city manager. So we're happy to have them here and available for any questions as well. This is the kickoff workshop for the City of Indian Wells General Plan Update. The city is leading efforts to update the general plan to create a document that reflects the values and visions of our residents and our affected stakeholders. The general plan update process will extend through the next year, and during that time, we're going to work hard to gather a lot of information from the affected community and the stakeholders and incorporate that into the general plan update. As we initiate the public input process here today, as Jenna mentioned, you can also find information on the general plan website that we have created to continue your conversations and discover new information on there and updated plans as we finish them. Again, just for your information, that website address is indianwells.generalplan.org, and there's also a link to it on the city's website under the news section. So the city really needs and values your input in this process, and we are encouraged to see that there are many members of the community here today to help initiate this project. As a reminder, the workshop today is being recorded, so you can review it or share it with friends and other community members that might be interested by accessing the general plan website that I just mentioned. So thank you again all for attending, and we look to have a productive meeting here with you. And I'll now turn it back over to Jenna, who's going to walk us through some community introductions. Jenna?
Great, thank you so much, John. So John was able to just provide a little context and introduce the project team, and we're always trying to find ways when we're meeting online how we could actually feel like we're neighbors and more meeting in person too. And so whether you're joining us from the phone or from the web today, we wanted to give folks the opportunity to introduce themselves and just set the community setting a little bit. And so I would love it if folks can either use the raise hand feature to let us know that you want to speak, to raise your hand. If you're a call-in user, you can push *9 on your phone. So if you're a call-in user, *9 on your phone, it'll raise your hand for us. Or you can enter it in the chat box. We want to hear your name, your neighborhood, and the view from your window. So your name and neighborhood and your view from your window. So I'll wait a couple minutes, just a couple seconds, to see if anyone does raise their hand, and we'll be looking at the chat box too to see where people are calling from, what part of the city, or if you're out of town today, what your view from your window is. All right, so Clive, I'm going to unmute you, and if you want to tell us your name, your neighborhood, and your view from your window.
Hi, my name is Clive Waitman. I live in Montalina, right opposite the City Hall. Been here for 8 years, and I'm looking out at the beautiful walls of Bougainvillea and a swimming pool.
That sounds absolutely lovely. Thank you, Clive, for volunteering yourself and letting us know. So I'll mute you now, but thank you so much. I see someone has a question about the raise hand feature. So just to say, if you click on the participants list at the bottom of your screen, I think we might have a way to do that. Nope. You click on the participants list at the bottom of your screen, and on the side you can see raise hand. But I see from, oh, we got a couple hands raised here. All right, so the second person I will call on is a call-in user. And Christian, can you let me know what the last 4 digits are of that call-in user? If you push *9,
yeah,
no problem. If you push *9 on your phone, I'm unmuting you now, so you're ready to go. Hi, what's your name, neighborhood, and view from your window?
Laura Lee Williams, and I'm in Colony Cove, and my view from my window is my courtyard, which has some beautiful flowers in it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for using that feature and telling us a little bit about the view from your neighborhood.
And I'd like to also,
okay.
real quick,
sorry,
Jenna,
John.
I'm sorry, break in. Laura Lee is also a planning commissioner for the city of Indian Wells, so I just wanted to mention that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that, and we're glad you could join us here today. So the next person is David. So David, I'm going to unmute you here, and if you could share a little bit about you.
Yeah.
You're unmuted.
Thank you, and I found the raise hand button. Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to participate. My name is David Jankowski. I live in Clubview within Mountain Cove, and I am right now at my house in Carlsbad, California, which I just sold so that I can spend more time in Indian Wells. I am looking out the window of my home office into a courtyard with a large Spanish fountain.
That sounds lovely, and we're glad to hear you calling in from Carlsbad and also knowing about your home in Indian Wells. So thank you everyone who volunteered and shared a little bit about yourselves with us today. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Amanda Tropiano to give us just some background on the general plan update and why we're going forward with it. Amanda?
Great. Thank you, Jenna, and thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Amanda Tropiano, and I'm a principal with De Novo Planning Group. We're really excited to be working with the City of Indian Wells on your comprehensive general plan update. So first, I'm going to just share a little bit of information about what a general plan is, what topics are included, and the process for our project here in Indian Wells. So every city and county in California needs to have a general plan. It's a long-term vision for what the community wants to look like over the next 10 or 20 years. So it should be aspirational, but grounded in reality, and really serve as a resource for defining how you get from where you are today to where you want to be in the future. It's important that your general plan is founded on your local issues and priorities, and as such, it will reflect the goals, policies, and objectives relevant to your local community. So it's customized specifically for your city to meet your long-term needs. City staff, your elected and appointed officials, business owners, developers, people looking to invest in your community, as well as their residents, can look to the general plan for guidance on how to make decisions over the long term. It also includes a specific update to the city's housing element, which is required to be updated every 8 years by California state law. Your housing element needs to be updated by October 15th, 2021, and that's included as part of this project. Next slide. So what is included in the general plan besides that housing element? The city is required to cover 7 specific topics. Those include land use, housing, transportation, open space, recreation, public safety, and noise. The city also has the option to cover topics that are of local importance. And so in Indian Wells, we'll also be covering the topics of sustainability, which includes fiscal sustainability and economic development, community design, and community facilities. The reason that we're taking the opportunity to update your general plan right now is that from time to time, we find it really relevant to take a fresh look and think about what the future of your community wants to look like, and make sure that your policy document has the direction in order to get you from point A to point B. So the city's last comprehensive update to its general plan was 25 years ago, back in 1996. So as I'm sure you can imagine, a lot has changed since then. In addition to just changing socioeconomic patterns in your community and in the region, there are new state requirements to address specific topics in your general plan. In addition to the topics related to the housing element, the city is also required to talk about topics like climate change and sustainability, fire hazards, and environmental justice. This is also a really nice opportunity to connect with the community. We know that things are a little bit odd right now in the way that we're able to communicate with you, but it's really a wonderful chance to just reaffirm and reassess the priorities for the community and decide how we want to move forward over the next 20 years. The opportunity to identify specific sites and development patterns is also an important component of this project. So we'll be looking at some of the city's vacant or underutilized sites and thinking about what those mean in terms of the long-term land use plan. Next slide. The process is broken up into a series of distinct phases. The first is the identification of community priorities, and we're accomplishing that in part right now by working with the community through these virtual workshops. We'll also be completing a detailed analysis of existing conditions, reviewing land use options, particularly as they relate to your opportunity sites, preparing a draft general plan policy document. We'll be studying the potential environmental impacts associated with the project by preparing a program environmental impact report, and then presenting all of these documents through the public hearing process to your Planning Commission and your City Council. Throughout the entire process, we're going to be continuing to look for opportunities to engage the community. So thank you so much for joining us today as the start of that process. Next slide. So in addition to today's virtual workshop, we have 3 other workshops planned. Depending on how we're able to communicate virtually or in person, we'll continue to look for ways to connect with the community in both online and in-person formats. So today we're going to be talking a lot about the vision and values of the community. We'll also be hosting a virtual workshop focused on community health and wellness. A little bit later in the process, we'll dive deeper into those land use alternatives and be evaluating them with the community. And then ultimately, when the draft general plan policy document's prepared, we'll be presenting that to the community for input as well. In addition to working through these workshops, we'll be hosting stakeholder and community member interviews to dive a little bit deeper, particularly as we start to evaluate your opportunity sites. And we'll be using all of this information to prepare a community vision, which is really going to stand as the cornerstone of our policy document. Next slide. So we want to spend just a few minutes making sure that we have a good understanding of the existing baseline community here in Indian Wells. So I'm going to present a few just key points of information, and I encourage you to check the website for a more complete document that dives deeper into these details. Again, that's at indianwells.generalplan.org. So if any of this is particularly interesting for you and you want to learn a little bit more, please go visit that website under the documents page and you'll be able to learn more about this. Next slide. So as I talk about some of these key indicators, I'm going to refer to a few different parameters. So obviously focusing on the city of Indian Wells, but we're also going to be looking at something called the trade area, which includes the cities of Cathedral City, Coachella, Desert Hot Springs, your city, Indio, La Quinta, Palm Desert, Palm Springs, and Rancho Mirage. And the intent of comparing it to this trade area is really to understand kind of typical patterns of how people move around the region. And then we're also going to be looking in some cases to references to Eastern Riverside County. Next slide. So this is a socioeconomic overview and just a quick summary of how your community relates to the broader trade area and to Eastern Riverside County as a whole. So in 2018, the city of Indian Wells had a population of around 5,500 people, 2,700 households. From 2000 to 2018, your population growth and household growth grew at approximately the same rate, around 38 or 39%. This is a little bit lower than the development seen in the trade area and in Eastern Riverside County. And that would be expected because those broader areas have more opportunities for growth and development than a community like Indian Wells has. Your household size is a little bit lower. It's just under 2 persons per household at 1.92. There's about a half person more in the trade area and almost a full person more per household in Eastern Riverside County. And that's important to think about when you start planning for facilities, services, and the types of homes that people want to have options to live in here in your community. Your community is extremely educated. More than twice as many people have a college degree as the trade area or Eastern Riverside County. And correspondingly, your median household income is also significantly higher, twice as much as the trade area or the Eastern Riverside County region. Your jobs to housing ratio is 1.23, which means that you have slightly more jobs in your community than you do households. It all hovers generally in the same area in the trade area in Eastern Riverside County. And to the extent that this may influence your land use decisions, it's important to know how people are commuting in and out, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Next slide. The city's existing housing stock is primarily composed of single-family units. That's both attached and detached units. There are very few, the proportion of your housing stock composed of multifamily units is much smaller than in the trade area or Riverside County as a whole. And the same goes for mobile homes, where our community here in Indian Wells has very, very few, and the trade area and Riverside County offer a slightly higher percentage of their housing stock in that product type. Next slide. The median home price in Indian Wells in this year, 2020, is approximately $775,000. As you can see on the screen, this is significantly higher than the home prices in the trade area or in Eastern Riverside County. Right now, your home prices are creeping towards the pre-Great Recession levels, but we're not quite back to the peak yet. But you can see that the trend and pattern largely resembles that has been seen in the trade area in Riverside County as well. One of the things we want to look at, though, is the role that the amount of income resources that need to be devoted to housing costs and to understand how cost burdened some of your residents may be. And that means that your household might be spending 30% or more of its income on housing. So for owner-occupied units, 35% of Indian Wells residents are spending 30% or more of their income on housing. Next slide. Now, on the flip side, Indian Wells has relatively affordable rents when compared to the trade area in Riverside County. And the reason that this might emerge is that there are just fewer dedicated rentals in Indian Wells than there are in these more broad geographies. But one of the unique indicators is that those people that are renting in your community, even though there aren't a lot of them, they're spent over 88% of renters in Indian Wells are spending more than 30% of their income on housing. And so this might help inform your understanding of some of those, particular challenges that your renting community might experience. Next slide. As I had mentioned, your commute pattern is very similar to other tourist or tourism destination communities, where there are a number of residents leaving the community every day for work, and there are different people coming into your community every day to work in Indian Wells. You have more people coming into the community for jobs located in the city than you have people with jobs living in the city going elsewhere. So there's kind of a disconnect between the people who live and work in Indian Wells. Only a very few, a very small percentage of people both live and work in your community. Next slide. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to the Kearns and West team to get your input on some of the information that I shared.
Great, thank you, Amanda. So we're going to do a couple ways to get input from folks today and hear a little from you. So the first thing we're going to do is from a poll through something called Poll Everywhere. And so if you are on your phone or you're on your computer, you can do this through two options. So the first is you can open your phone and send a text message to the number 22333. And then when you get a message back from 22333, you can text KW poll 1 to join. And it's not case sensitive, so KW poll 1 to join, and you'll receive a message that you've joined the session. And again, this is completely private and anonymous. It's just a way for us to hear from you in a creative way. You can also, if you're on your computer, use your web browser, whether it's Chrome or Internet Explorer, Firefox, whichever one you use to access the internet. Christian put this link into the chat box here, and it's the link, and you can copy and paste it from there, or you can just go straight into your browser and type the word poll, POLLEV.com/KW poll 1 into your browser. So I'd recommend copying and pasting it into there. And we'll have a couple questions throughout the presentation for you to respond. So this will be kind of the main way that we're going to hear from you. Through this, we're going to do polls about just like A, B, C, and D polls, like responding in that way, but also if you would like to give us more information later on some of your thoughts, we're actually going to have you text them or write them in as well, and they'll show up on the screen. They won't be associated with your name. There will just be the answers, and that way people can see a little more information about what your input is on the process. So I'm going to have folks who have been able to text the number or have been able to go to the website to use the raise hand feature. So you can use, we practiced that a little bit earlier today. So if you click on participants and then use the raise hand, and just let us know if you've been able to send a text or go to that, website in your browser to write the poll. So I see quite a couple people have been able to do it. And then also, if you are having trouble with that, if you want to write a message in the chat box with a question of how to get there, that would be great too. But we really want to be able to hear from you, and this will help build upon the presentation today, is to hear some of your thoughts on and input on the process. So I'm going to leave this up for another 10 seconds or so. So you can copy and paste the link into your browser, or you can send a text. I always send a text because sometimes it's a little easier from my phone. Okay. So putting our mind back to what Amanda just talked about the City of Indian Wells, the question is, what surprised you about the data that was presented? What surprised you about the data that was presented? So you can send a text, or you can write it in on the website. And we have a couple folks, someone mentioned the level of rental property in the community. Someone said not really anything surprised them about it. And then also, if you're unable to access that, you can also just send us a chat, like let us know in the chat box anything about that. So because this is going to be the first question that we're going to be using Poll Everywhere for, we're going to hang out here for a little bit and get people used to using this. So I see peak sales prices for Indian Wells homes was 2006 to 2007. That is an interesting note too. Another person noted that housing prices have not recovered to 2007 levels. That is a good note as well. Anyone else with something that surprised them about the community data? All right, so I'll move on, but if you have your web browser open with and you were writing in your input on this, keep that open. We'll use the same text chain to ask questions later on in the presentation as well. So using that same information, we're going to do a little bit of a visioning exercise. So when Amanda was talking about the general plan update, and as part of that process, creating a community vision, this is what we're talking about here and laying the foundation for. So right now on the city of Indian Wells' website, there's a mission statement, and the mission statement says that the city will create an unsurpassed quality of life for residents and guests by providing superior public safety, exceptional service, and outstanding amenities that will further enhance our image as a prestigious community and international resort destination. So that's the mission statement on the city's website. The difference between a mission statement and a general plan vision statement is that for the general plan, we have a shared statement that highlights a shared vision for the future, and it's centered on values and purpose. So there's a few things that we'll do when we're creating together this vision statement. The first is that we like to be positive and present tense. So talking about the community in the future as if it were now. And so we like to think of things in a really positive manner. So one example I like to give is if people say, our community will not have any criminal activity. You know, that's not really something you want to put in a vision statement, but you might say our community is a safe place for all residents to enjoy. So there's that positive way of talking about it and envisioning for the future. And then there's qualities and terms that invoke or explain the city's uniqueness. What makes Indian Wells stand out compared to the surrounding communities? There's language and ideas that are inclusive of all people in the city and thinking about the city's population, young or old, new to the community or a long-standing neighbor. And there's high standards for excellence and achievement. We heard a little bit of that or a lot of that in the city's mission statement as well. We want to set ourselves up to have high standards for excellence. And we're focusing on people and quality of life. How do people experience living in the city? What is the quality of life of living in Indian Wells? And there's a schedule or a time period associated with it in general. So it's a lot of pieces. And we're not going to create the vision statement here today. That would be a really long process, and there's got to be some give and take with it. But we want to lay the groundwork for that vision statement. So we had you test out the poll everywhere as part of your of the community profile to ask folks what surprised you about the data. So we're going to use the same piece to begin to lay the framework and foundation for the vision statement. So I'm just going to remind folks, if you've just joined us, you can send a text or use the web browser option. And our first question for you is, what do you love about Indian Wells? So you can write one word, you can write 2 words. What is it that you love about Indian Wells? You can also just leave us a message in the chat box as well, and we can add that in as part of this. And once we receive some responses here, they'll show up and we can start to see what people are thinking. And I see someone with their hand raised. David, I'm going to unmute you here and hear what you love about Indian Wells.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Actually, that was my hand raised as in I can work the chat thing. But what I love, we started coming here in around 2008 to go to the BNP Paribas tennis tournament. And it was obvious that there was a difference just driving down 111, going from Palm Springs all the way to Coachella, that Indian Wells was unique. It looked and felt different. There was a sense of, it's very difficult to put my finger on it. There was just a sense of class, a sense of refinement, that's the word I wanted, a sense of refinement that I didn't see driving through the town.
That's great to hear. So David, if you want to add that, we'll take that as a note too, but if you want to add that to the poll everywhere, that would be great too. So David mentioned when he was driving through, when he first moved here, there was a sense of refinement and a sense of class, and then also something that was hard to put his finger on. People have noted that it's a residential community, talking about the beautiful landscaping, the beautiful neighborhoods, how it's centrally located in the valley. The greenery, here we go. The greenery, that it's lush, and there's that aspect of the beauty of the community here. And here's David's answer here. There's a sense of refinement missing from other cities as well. I'm going to change the visual settings on here really quick because I want to be able to see a couple more options. There we go. So there's some key terms that folks have submitted here that stand out to me a little bit too, in talking about some of the assets in the community, the tennis garden, and that we have a really beautiful community that folks note. So thinking about and grounding yourself in what you love about Indian Wells, I want to ask you to list 3 words or ideas you would want to see included in a vision statement. So we talked about the vision statement being positive. We've talked about it being present tense, but thinking of the future. And we talked about it as being something that would speak to the people's quality of life. And so I see someone noted that quality of life as words that they would want to see included in the vision statement. But when you, as residents and stakeholders in Indian Wells, what do you think of as words you would want to see in that future vision statement? I see quiet. I see upscale. And this is a word cloud too, which I think a lot of folks are familiar with. And so the more a word is written in, the bigger it gets. So quality is standing out as well. I see welcoming. I see welcoming and exclusive. And so that's an interesting mix as well, and something that's pretty unique to Indian Wells. That there's safety, that it's well managed. There's the community feel, there's the community life. I get that it feels, another word I see here is friendly. That there's community, that people care about each other. And as people are writing in these words, I know we have a couple call-in users, and so I just want to provide the opportunity for folks who aren't able to text in or to go on the computer here to write in words you would want to see in the general plan. If you are a call-in user and you want to just list a couple words or ideas you'd want to see in the general plan, you can push *9 on your phone and let us know that you want to add a couple words, and I can unmute you and hear what those words are. I saw a couple more come in. Manicured, which is interesting too, I think, speaking to the landscaping and the beautiful landscaping that people see as well. All right, so between what people love about Indian Wells and words you would want to see included in the general plan, I think we have a pretty good representation of what people are loving about the community that you live in. And so we talked about the vision plan being the general plan being a long-term document, something that's really speaking about the future of Indian Wells. And I see this proximity to the Santa Rosa Mountains as something that's one of the biggest opportunities for Indian Wells in the future. And so my question is, when you're thinking long-term and you're thinking a few years out in the future for Indian Wells, what are some of the biggest opportunities that the city could capitalize on? Biggest opportunities the city can capitalize on. All right, I see fine dining and entertainment. Capitalizing on the location right up close to the Santa Rosas. Any other opportunities? Open spaces, the low density buildings, recreation. Growing exclusive events such as tennis and pickleball. There's definitely those facilities, maybe expanding upon those. Taking advantage of the property on the northwest, and I don't know if we can see this down here. I'm going to try and move this down on the northwest and northeast corner of Miles and 111. So that vacant property on the northwest and northeast of Miles and 111. Any other opportunities that the city can take advantage of in the future, in the long term? Or ways that you think that the city can continue to grow? All right, any folks who are unable to provide their input here, you can also raise your hand and I can call on you to see if there's anything that you'd like to see. All right, I see a couple coming in here. And they're just a little. Amateur golf event at the city golf course. Revitalize the village. Revitalize village. All right, and then work from home. People who might be able to work in tech and live in Indian Wells and maybe work in a job in another location as well. Well, thank you so much, folks. I really appreciate everyone providing that input and insight. And so this poll will be left open here about what you think the biggest opportunities are long term. And there's definitely space to provide more insight on that as well. I'm going to turn it back over to Amanda Tropiano to talk about the opportunity areas in Indian Wells. So Amanda, over to you.
Great, thank you so much, Jenna. I appreciate that. So as she had mentioned, we're going to spend a few more minutes talking about the specific land use opportunities that we're going to explore as part of this process. So I want to stress that today is just the first of many conversations with the community and with your property owners and key stakeholders. So we're just starting to get an initial understanding of what some of these opportunities are. Next slide. So we recognize that Indian Wells is largely built out. So we're not the type of community that's going to be looking around for, huge empty spaces that are, allowing for expanded growth beyond the boundary of your development. So really looking forward, we're focusing on a limited number of places that are vacant or underutilized, meaning maybe they could redevelop over time into a different type of use. And we are doing that in order to accommodate future growth that your community needs to plan for. So that's looking at planning for future housing opportunities in accordance with state housing requirements. That's looking at new opportunities for retail and commercial development, new places for public facilities and community uses. So really the full spectrum that makes your community such a special place to be. So on the next screen, we're going to share some specific areas on a map, and we're going to ask for your feedback in the next poll on a few key items. So this map shows an area, 6 separate areas shown in various colors, areas 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. They kind of break the city up into discrete, planning areas for you to provide us guidance on. So this is really just a mechanism for you to help share your input in this way. We also have, largely located around the tennis garden, a few areas highlighted in yellow or in red. The yellow areas are opportunity sites that the city owns. The red areas are owned by the private development community. So we've got those pointed out just to really illustrate where some of these key vacant or underutilized parcels are and where we expect most of our land use attention to be focused, largely in the eastern edge of the community around the tennis garden at these sites. But what we're here today to ask you about is if there are any other areas, specifically, referring to these areas 1 through 6, that you think really warrant some special attention from us. And that doesn't mean that they would change in land use, because we fully appreciate and value your existing residential communities, and they'll continue to be a key factor of the Indian Wells community going forward. But what I'm looking for is, there any areas where you think need special attention in terms of how it looks, how it feels, if there are different types of amenities or uses you want to see there. So we have developed this map, so just take a look at it and then be able to jot down maybe some feedback in our poll. So again, this is really the beginning of the discussion about what these sites might look like, but we'd love to get some initial ideas from you so that we can start to have a more detailed understanding of the opportunities here in Indian Wells.
All right, so I'm going to keep us on the screen for a moment before we go to the next slide, just so you can just think about the different parts of the city and think about different areas in the community that could, that you think are areas for opportunity. You might want to take notes on a notepad, or just think of, if there's one area that you're really thinking about and want to provide some input on, thinking about that one area. Or maybe you own some land and you know it's an opportunity that we haven't yet identified. So I'm going to go to the next page here, which is just that question, that space for you to provide that input. And so, as Amanda mentioned, we could say, IE Area 1 needs more retail opportunities, for example. So we're using the same piece, the text or the web browser. So our question is for opportunity areas. Is there any opportunity areas listed on that map that you think need, that any areas on that map that you think are opportunity areas? And I see David has his hand raised. And so David, I'm going to quickly call on you.
Yeah,
David,
thanks.
you're unmuted.
While everyone's typing. The way I think it was the consultant, Amanda, stated it, and the way it came across, at least to me when this was emailed out, is that growth is a given. And I would love to see this city push back on that. I don't see a moral imperative or an economic imperative or any imperative to grow. We have global warming, we have wildfires, we have traffic, we have water shortages, and the answer is to grow? Am I the only sane one? If growth is the answer, I have to know the question, because I don't have a clue what the question is if the answer is growth. And I'd love to see this city, which has done such an amazing job of showing fiscal leadership to the rest of the state of California, to push back on this, we must grow, when there's all these vectors telling us that growth is the last thing we should be doing.
All right, so David, that's actually something that you could, in the poll too, just write, maybe there isn't areas that you think for opportunity areas. And so, so I don't see any responses yet. So maybe that's something too that we'll take input on too. Are there places in the city that you don't want to see opportunity areas as? And this is funny, we're in a weird visual settings here. So let me actually change that to be a text wall there. So area 5, I see multiple vacant sites in the shopping center. Someone mentioned, like David did, no more growth.
So Jenna, I'll provide a little more context, but I think all the input we're receiving is valid. So continue to provide that input that you see is a good reflection of your priorities. The context I do want to provide for your consideration is just the city's obligation to meet housing growth projections. The city is required to update its housing element as part of this process, and there's some detailed information about that on the website. It's a unique chapter of your general plan that is governed by state of California housing law, and there is a process by which every city and county in California is obligated to plan for their share of regional growth as determined by the state of California and your regional organizations. So I'm not here to tell you how or where or in what way we would grow, but I am here to help ensure that the city is well protected in terms of its obligations to meet those requirements. So we do have choices in the way that we approach that topic, and any feedback that you provide as part of that helps inform that approach. So any of your feedback is valid and helpful.
All right, thank you, Amanda. We've gotten a few responses in too. We talked about the province area 5, filling in existing residential sites with same quality of housing we've all bought into, fighting state of California housing law, smart growth. So any other opportunity areas in the city we're thinking about the city's future? All right, I'll give a couple more minutes for people to think that through. I'll show the responses we have here. All right, we'll move on to the next part of today is the wrap up and next steps for today. And Amanda, I don't know if you wanted to talk through what this is gonna look like. I know we have 4 community workshops coming up, the vision and values discussion today, and upcoming workshops on community health and wellness, land use alternatives, evaluation, and finally looking at the draft general plan presentation and comments. But share with us briefly how people's input will be used from the workshop today.
Sure, thank you. So we're going to prepare a summary of the feedback we received for today's workshop, and that will be posted to the project website and available for you all to confirm that we heard your feedback correctly. And the way that this information is going to be used is really coupled with the input that we receive at the next workshop focused on community health and wellness. We're going to be using your phrases, your vision statements, your ideas about the future of Indian Wells to help create a draft community vision. And this is going to be a short, succinct vision statement that's going to guide our policy document. And we'll be presenting that to your city council for their review and input. So your feedback today will directly inform the way that we develop that draft vision statement for use in the general plan document. Looking forward, the last 2 workshops focused on the land use alternatives and the draft policy document. Those will be more of the public's review and comment of potential options we have to guide our policy direction. So those will be scheduled at a later date. I'm expecting the land use alternatives discussion to be sometime in early spring, and then the policy document towards the end of next year. But we hope that you've registered your contact information on our project website, indianwells.generalplan.org, that you registered through the process to join us at today's Vision and Values workshop, and you'll be informed directly of any future engagement programs we have. If you continue to have comments, there is a Contact Us feature on the project website where you can both register your name and email address for future updates, as well as leave a comment. So if there's anything you feel like you weren't able to share today and you want to make sure our project team knows, please contact us that way.
Great, thank you, Amanda. And I think we have some time for some question and answer as well. And so if anyone does have any additional questions about the process or about the general plan, we do want to create space for that. So if you do have a question, you can raise your hand. If you're on the phone, you can press *9 and let us know if you have any additional questions. All right, David, I see your hand is raised today. You're not shy to speak on a webinar call, and we're appreciative of that. So I'm going to unmute you here, and we have a couple minutes for a Q&A.
Thanks. Yeah, many years of using webinars to run my organization, so you get used to it. And if you don't speak up, you can't complain. I brought up in one of the previous polls the 2 eyesores on the northeast and northwest corners of Miles and 111. And it's been really disappointing to see the lack of progress. We heard several years ago some hotshot boutique developer was going to build a hotel. And when I read that, I just thought, yeah, right, that'll never happen. The city has all kinds of tools in its toolbox that it has not used to spur this development along. There are numerous municipalities in the United States and in California that use almost like a cattle prod approach to these developers. These properties right now are listed at ridiculous prices, and that's why they're sitting empty. The city has tools in its toolbox to prod the developers to price the property, to get it sold so that we can finish the pathway, for example, that runs along 111, so we can bike from one end to the other, to get rid of all that dust and that general eyesore. And I don't see the city doing anything about it. I see the city, maybe every year a new sign goes up with some new guy's name, but I don't see the city actually doing anything to force a sale, which they can do. Those tools are available to municipalities.
So David, do you have a question that maybe if about the city and its maybe future on that site that the city can help respond to?
Well, that's what I'm asking. I mean, this is about the vision, and you highlighted the growth, and that particular zone had these 2 big red properties that are privately owned. And we can vision all we want about that stuff, but if the companies that own them are going to ask for the moon, then they're going to sit empty forever unless the city takes some action to spur these owners to poop or get off the pot.
So I think John Berg from the city unmuted himself to respond. So John, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I can add some information, David.
And you're a little quiet if you get a little closer.
Okay. So the specific property that you're mentioning is privately owned, as you mentioned. The one on the northwest corner is owned by a gentleman, and we did just entitle a project about 2 years ago that was fully entitled. They went through the Planning Commission and City Council, and it was for a large hotel development that included a residential condominium component to it, and also some villas that help support the hotel property. Unfortunately, in this instance, the developer was all ready to go forward, but their financing fell apart, David, when the COVID situation hit, and it just really turned up the financial world upside down, and they weren't able to procure the funds they needed to move forward on that, and they eventually fell out of the agreement with the landowner for the property because they weren't able to effectuate that sale. And so we are currently working with that property owner and also I will say that, yes, we do understand we have tools, but those tools are pretty limited, and that, we were offering, specifically with this development, a contribution of $5.5 million of the city's general fund money to help, do public improvements to that project. So it wasn't that they were just coming in and being able to develop this kind of a project by themselves. The city was participating, because we saw the value in having this done. And unfortunately, it all fell apart because of COVID, as a lot of things have fallen apart. It's just kind of a fact of the situation we're under right now. As far as eminent domain, I think you're mentioning we have the ability to take the property. We really don't. Unless we can find some public need and necessity for that property, like to provide some public good to the city, like a new intersection or some kind of need that the city has. But just to tell them that they need to sell the property and for what cost, we really don't have the ability to do that. And on the other side of Miles there, we are, we agree that it's been frustrating dealing with this property owner. They have been kind of land banking that property, and they're part of a specific plan that incorporates both sides, and they have basically entitlements to develop a commercial strip center there. But the city doesn't want to see that. We'd like to see something a little bit more creative there, and we want to work with a future developer to help bring something that's of more value to the city and more up to the times. And so,
yeah.
They do have a development agreement that is in default with the city, and so we are looking at opportunities to move forward and help the city kind of maybe possibly gain that property and do something creative with it. But it is frustrating for us as well as city employees and staff to have those two properties vacant for so long. And I just wanted to let you know that the situation that occurred with the TMC group that had a fully entitled project and were ready to go fell apart because of the COVID situation. And it was no fault of theirs and no fault of the city's. And that was going to be the catalyst to kind of bring forward the development to the east as well. Because as soon as you get a big development like that, you get more interest on the neighboring properties to do something unique and interesting. So we acknowledge that what you're saying makes a lot of sense, but we are limited in what we can do as we're not the property owners.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. And I think one thing that you highlighted, that is highlighted in this conversation, is that we'll be continuing to engage property owners throughout the process to find a way to forward the community's vision so that over the next 20 years, we're able to implement that vision. And we know that everyone needs to come to the table to make it happen. And the city is committed to trying to engage all community members to maintain and improve quality of life. So any other questions before we close today? And if you'd like to, you can use the raise hand feature. I do see a question here. I think there is a question about the authorization to put commercial on the northeast property on Miles and 111. And maybe, John, if you can clarify what you mean by, or what was said about commercial on the northeast property.
Yes, both sides of that intersection are under a specific plan. It's called the Indian Wells Crossing Specific Plan. And so, as I mentioned, the one in the northwest corner is slated for the development of hotel, condominiums, and villas. And on the northeast corner was slated for 130,000 square feet of commercial uses. What the footprint of that looks like is still to be determined when the development comes forward, but it is under a specific plan and it was approved through the city for commercial uses on that property, which is consistent with the underlying commercial zoning.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And I don't think I see any questions or hands raised, and so I want to thank folks for joining us today. And just to remind everyone that you can contact both John and Luis with questions about the general plan update. And as well as the city's website. And so Christian just posted the link to the city's website in the chat as well. And we want to thank everyone for joining us. John, Amanda, do you have any closing thoughts? Oh, John, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I just wanted to, again, thank you all for your time and interest in the city's general plan update process. It's a large undertaking for the city, as you know, and it's critical that we get the community's input and ideas to effectively guide and shape the vision of our city now and in the future. So in that regard, please try to attend and let your neighbors know about the future workshops. And remember, check the city's website, for updated information and schedules moving forward. On behalf of the city and the consultant team, we thank you for your attendance and participation today, and we look forward to seeing you at the next workshop.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll talk to everyone soon.